When we think of Frida Kahlo, we often see the icon, right? The face on a t-shirt. But that view, man, it misses the genius of it all. It misses the architect behind the art. Because underneath that famous unibrow and all those flowers was a deliberate, disciplined code for transforming absolute agony into enduring power. And today, we're going to decode it. In 1925, 18-year-old Frida Kahlo suffered a catastrophic bus accident that shattered her spine and crushed her medical aspirations. Immobile, encased in a full-body cast, her entire world just shrank to the four corners of her bed. And in that silent prison of plaster and pain, she made a fierce, defiant demand: attach a mirror above my bed.
Now, just stop and think about that choice for a second. Not for books, not for music, not for distraction. She asked for a mirror. Why? Why, in a moment of total ruin, with her body and her future just completely shattered, would you demand to stare directly at the damage? This single question, well, it's the key that unlocks everything about her life and her art.
Because that demand, you see, it wasn't some emotional outburst. It was a strategy. It was the first, absolutely critical step in developing a new way to not just survive, but to actively create something from a foundation of pure chaos. It was her first move to assert control when she had absolutely none.
This moment, this was the genesis of the Frida Kahlo Code. It's a systematic philosophy, a set of disciplined actions, all designed to literally metabolize pain and turn it into power. And it's a code that offers a blueprint, not just for artists, but really for anyone navigating their own struggles.
But here's the thing. This code, this incredible resilience, it didn't just appear out of nowhere after the accident. Oh no. It was forged over years, hammered into shape by a life that had already taught her some profound, hard lessons about just how fragile the human body can be, long before that fateful bus ride. Her education in pain started early. At just 6 years old, polio ravaged her right leg, leaving it withered and shorter than the other. So right there, that was her first lesson in being different, in the body's capacity for betrayal. Then, at 18, the bus accident, a complete system shock that broke her spine in 3 places, shattered her pelvis, and left her impaled by a handrail. And from that day forward, it was just a lifetime of inescapable chronic pain. And that lifetime of pain, it was punctuated by constant medical interventions. Over the course of her life, Frida Kahlo would endure more than 30 surgeries. 30+ times she went under the knife, submitting her body to be cut, fused, and braced in this endless, heartbreaking attempt to repair what was fundamentally broken. That number, it's not a statistic. It's a measure of a relentless, grinding war she waged against her own physical self. Now, here's what's so crucial to understand, and it's kind of mind-bending. This constant struggle, her forced immobility, it wasn't just some obstacle she had to overcome. It was the necessary prerequisite for her code. The prison of her bed actually became the crucible that forced her to invent an entirely new way of seeing, of existing, and of creating. And this is the pivot point. She realized she couldn't control her physical reality, right? But she could control her perception of it. She learned the only way to manage the external chaos of her failing body was to gain internal control, to impose an intellectual and an aesthetic order on her own suffering. Suddenly, her bed wasn't a sick room anymore. It was her studio. Her pain was no longer just a curse. It became her primary subject. So, how did she turn this big realization into a repeatable daily practice? This is where we get into the nuts and bolts of the actual philosophy. Her method wasn't random at all. It was incredibly structured. So let's break down the 3 core pillars that form the foundation of her entire creative and survival system. At its heart, the Frida Kahlo Code is this radical belief that suffering is not a terminal state you just have to endure. No. Instead, it's a raw, powerful, and uniquely personal resource for creation. Think of it like unrefined ore, from which you can forge meaning and beauty. It's fuel. The central operating principle is this: the self is the ultimate subject of analysis. In a world of chaos she couldn't control, she chose the one subject she had complete and total access to, herself. She turned the lens of her intellect and her art inward, examining her own reality with the unflinching, objective focus of a scientist studying a specimen. And this whole analysis is executed through 3 distinct pillars, almost like a sequence of operations. First, you have the self-reflection mandate. Second, the symbolic abstraction of trauma. And third, the identity synthesis rule. Let's dig into each one.
Pillar 1, the self-reflection mandate, takes us right back to that mirror. It is the non-negotiable ritual of confronting your own reality, your flaws, your brokenness, your beauty, your pain, directly and without flinching. For her, this was literal. For us, it's about the practice of radical self-honesty. Bottom line, you cannot transform what you refuse to see.
Pillar 2, symbolic abstraction. This is where the alchemy happens. It's the process of translating that raw, private agony into a universal visual language that anyone can understand. The nails piercing her skin in the broken column, for example, they aren't just nails, they're a symbol for constant, sharp pain. The thorns, the monkeys, the tears, this wasn't random imagery. It was a carefully constructed vocabulary to make her internal state visible to the entire world.
And the final pillar, identity synthesis, is how she made her pain bigger than herself. She brilliantly fused her personal suffering with a fierce political pride in her heritage, her Mexicanidad. By dressing in traditional Tehuana garments and using folk art motifs, her pain wasn't just her pain anymore. It became woven into the fabric of Mexico's own history of suffering and revolution. It gave her struggle a collective purpose, way beyond her own survival.
So we have the philosophy, but a philosophy is pretty useless without a system to actually execute it, right? A code needs an operating system. So now we're going to look at the daily habits and the tangible routines Kahlo used to put her code into action every single day with just relentless discipline.
This slide just lays it out so perfectly. It illustrates the transformation she engineered. On one side, you have the chaos she was given, emotional agony, physical immobility, the betrayal of her own body. And on the other, you have the control she created, a daily protocol for creation, a meticulous system for cataloging emotion, and a rigorous, almost monastic discipline to hold it all together. She met chaos with structure. It's brilliant.
So the first habit was her Daily Immobile Creation Protocol. This was a fixed, daily commitment to making art, no matter what her pain level was, no matter her emotional state. She even had a custom easel built to fit over her bed. And this is so important. She didn't wait to feel better or for inspiration to strike. She transformed the very site of her suffering into a place of production. She ensured her external limits would never, ever dictate her internal productivity. And the second core habit was what you could call emotional cataloging and detailed discipline. I mean, if you look closely at her work, the precision is just breathtaking. That meticulous, high-detail realism wasn't just a style choice. It was a psychological tool she used to anchor the surreal, symbolic chaos of her feelings. She paired this with systematic journaling, filling notebooks with sketches and thoughts, literally organizing her pain on paper. Those journals then served as the direct, organized input for her paintings. It was basically a production line for turning feeling into art. So what was the ultimate result of this code, this system, this relentless discipline? Well, the result was a total transformation, not just of one woman's life, but of how the entire world understands the relationship between art, identity, and pain. Let's take a look at the legacy she built. I mean, the arc of her life is just astounding when you step back. She went from being a physically broken medical student with a canceled future to a global icon of defiant strength and radical creativity. This was not an accident of fate. It was the direct outcome of systematically applying her code. She literally built herself, brushstroke by brushstroke, into the icon we know today. And in doing all that, she proved something truly revolutionary to the world. She proved that suffering is not the end of your potential. In fact, it is the unique, non-replicable starting point for profound creation. Your specific pain gives you a perspective, a depth of vision that literally no one else has. That was her ultimate discovery. In the art world, her impact was absolutely seismic. Before Kahlo, the self-portrait was often, an exercise in vanity or a way to show off technical skill. She weaponized it. She redefined the entire form, turning it from a simple picture of a face into a political statement, a cultural artifact, and a powerful vehicle for unflinching emotional liberation. So the really crucial point about her legacy is this: she made vulnerability a strength. Her long-term impact was basically the institutionalization of raw vulnerability and visual autobiography as legitimate, powerful forces in art. She gave generations of artists who came after her the permission to tell their own true, painful, and complicated stories. So, why does the story of a Mexican painter from a century ago matter so much to us, right here, right now? Because the Frida Kahlo Code, it isn't just a piece of art history. It is a universal blueprint for resilience. It's a guide for how you can take the most difficult, painful parts of your own life and alchemize them into your greatest strength. And this is the profound lesson she leaves for every single one of us. Your unique suffering, the things that have happened only to you, the specific texture of your pain and your joy, that is your most valuable, non-replicable source material. In a world of infinite copies, your experience is the one thing no one else has. It is your strategic advantage. Frida Kahlo built her revolutionary art and her entire identity on one fundamental truth. The body may fail, the world may be chaotic, circumstances might be brutal, but the mind, your will, your focus, your perception must not fail. Your inner state does not have to be a casualty of your outer one. And the Frida Kahlo Code is the proof. It provides a systematic, repeatable blueprint for that exact transformation. It shows us, step by step, how to move from being a victim of our circumstances to being the creator of our own reality by using discipline and radical self-reflection as our primary tools. And in the end, it all comes down to one single immutable rule, a rule she lived and painted every single day of her life. Your greatest art, whether that's a painting, a company, a relationship, or the very life you build for yourself, is always, always found in your truth. In the fearless, unwavering confrontation with who you really are. We unpack the systems behind genius to give you actionable blueprints for your own intentional growth. If you found this valuable, go ahead and subscribe to our channel for more explainers that will help you build a more deliberate life.